allows the source to be included in his explanation. So now we have a story of Yaakov coming back from the land of Haran, from where he was with his extended family Lavan, and he's coming back for the first time after 22 years to the land of Israel. And the Torah tells us that he purchases a part of the field where he pitched his tent from the sons of Hamor, which is near the city of Shechem. Today it's known as Nablus. It was called by the Romans Annapolis after the destruction of the Bar Kokhba rebellion, because the P is hard to say amongst Arabs, so it was named Nablus. But this is the area of Shechem. This is where Joseph is buried, and this is where Yaakov purchased a part of his field to pitch his tent when he was traveling back to the land of Israel. And the Torah tells us, the Torah uses the word b'meya kesitah, with 100 kesitah. This is the only one of two times in the Torah, the Tanakh, uses the word kesitah, which we have to understand what that is. So Rashi tells us, Rashi doesn't just tell us what kesitah is. Rashi quotes a coin known as a ma'ah. A ma'ah is a coin. And he brings, where's the source that he brings? That's from Rabbi Akiva, who said, this is from the Talmud, where he said, when I traveled to the cities by the sea, they called a ma'ah kesitah. The word kesitah is a foreign language, and Rabbi Akiva is translating it as a coin. Now, this Rashi is a very questionable way of explaining this to us, and I'll tell you why. Because the Torah was first translated into Aramaic by two great sages who were obviously on a spiritual level to be able to understand the way of translating the Torah. It cannot be given over to a random person. It's not every single word has to be translated exactly the way the Torah's intention was to Moshe. And those two individuals who translated the Torah, one of them was Yonasan ben Uziel, known as the Targum Yonasan, which was written in Jerusalem. And the other was, which is the more famous one, is Onkelos. Onkelos was the nephew of one of the Roman emperors, and he converted to Judaism, and he became one of the greatest Torah scholars of his time, and he translated the Torah into Aramaic. Now, both the Targum Yonasan and Onkelos mention this word kesitah, and they both give two different translations. This is why the translation of the Torah into Aramaic was crucial in teaching us the importance of every single word of the Torah. So what does the Targum Yonasan say? That when he pitched the tent, when Yaakov pitched his tent, he bought the field, and he says the kesitah, he translates kesitah as a gem, for 100 gems, 100 kesitah. That's the Targum Yonasan. Now for the Targum Onkelos, which is the one that you'll find in most chumashim. Most of the chumashim that you see in the synagogue is usually has the Onkelos translation into Aramaic. And what does he say? That the word kesitah translates to sheep. That in those days, bartering was a very common practice, and the word kesitah was referencing that. And because remember, Yaakov came back with plenty of sheep that he back with Lavan, when he was taking care of the fields and the farms, so he owned many sheep. So it makes sense that he bartered 100 sheep for this piece of land, for the piece of the field where he pitched his tent. So if this is the case, that Onkelos translates it as sheep, and the Targum Yonasan translates it as gems, Rashi, who quotes these two translations very often when explaining something to the 5-year-old, omits it and does not quote them, does not even mention them, and he goes straight to Rabbi Akiva from the Talmud, who tells us that kesitah is a coin, that it's a coin, that he knows the word kesitah is a coin from the faraway places, the coastal cities where he travels to. Why does Rashi choose that explanation? Number one. Actually, we're gonna outline the questions here in more easier term. But before we do that, the Torah does give us a bit of a currency explanation which tells us that what is a coin? What is a coin in Torah language? A gera. The Torah uses the word gera when it came time in the parsha kesitah, when it came time to collect the half a shekel. So the Torah gives us the value of a gera. So the amount that was collected from each person was 10 gera, because 20 gera is a shekel. So if the Torah uses this currency and the Torah does not use the word kesitah, then it's more likely that the word kesitah is not referring to a form of currency. It's more referring to a gem or to a sheep. And what does Rashi himself say over there in Parshas Kisisa? Gera lashon ma. That a gera is like a coin, which means a ma, the same word that he's using to translate to explain the 5-year-old kesitah. When we have two of the translators of the Torah to Aramaic, the first translation of the Torah to Aramaic was done giving us two different explanations of the word kesitah. One says it's a sheep and the other says it's a gem. So why does Rashi omit that? So number one, why does Rashi choose the exotic explanation from Rabbi Akiva from his travels, rather than the local translation, which is the Onkelos and Targum Yodesan, which say sheep or a gem? And number two, why does Rashi relate the source of this translation? Remember, Rashi only quotes the source if it's relevant to the explanation. So why does he mention that it was heard from Rabbi Akiva when he traveled to the cities by the sea? And there's even another question. And that is that the Talmud that Rashi is quoting, where it mentions Rabbi Akiva's explanation, Rabbi Akiva actually says where he was. He doesn't just say the cities by the sea. He says Afrique, which doesn't mean Africa, according to the Maharal of Prague. He explains that Afrique was actually a place of a darkness, like an unknown place, a darkness by where there were mountains and beaches. It gives an explanation, but he says it's not Africa. That's his opinion. But the point is that Rabbi Akiva quotes the place Afrique when he's talking about where he learned that kesitah is a coin. But Rashi just says, no, it's from Rabbi Akiva's travels to the coastal cities. Why doesn't Rashi quote the whole source, not just the name? He should quote the land where Rabbi Akiva says he heard that term from. In general, why is he quoting the source in the first place? But if you're going to quote the source, quote it fully with the accurate language and location of Rabbi Akiva. So before we go further, the Rebbe's assumption here is that the reason why Rashi brings the explanation that kesitah is a coin rather than sheep or gems is for a specific reason and an explanation that Rashi wants to point out to the 5-year-old. Number two, the fact that Rashi is quoting Rabbi Akiva means that Rashi is trying to teach us something about this explanation of a coin related to Rabbi Akiva as a personality. And number three, Rashi omits the location where Rabbi Akiva heard the word kesitah, just says coastal towns or coastal cities, because there's a specific reason for that explanation that is necessary to say it that way. So let's go into the story itself. And this is very important, especially in relation to the land of Israel. So the first question is, and I'm going to shoot a little bit outside before we go into the text itself. The first question is, why did Yaakov have to buy the land where he was pitching a tent? He was on the way to visit his father. He said that last week already. He's on the way back to his father. His father was in Be'er Sheva when he left, but now his father was in Hebron. Either way, wherever Yaakov is going, if you know the map of Israel, Shechem is to the north and to the east of the Mediterranean. In other words, it's like closer to Jordan, or to what we know today as Jordan, while Hebron is more to the south, and Beersheba is also to the south. So Yaakov was obviously on his way to visit his father, back to his father. So he was traveling. So why did he have to buy the land that he would just rent it, borrow it, rent it, whatever? Why does the Torah he have to buy it? Why is the Torah telling us that he bought it? And number two, why is the Torah telling us how much he bought it for? When it came to Hebron, when Avram bought the Ma'aras HaMachpelah, the cave of the Machpelah, the Torah tells us he bought it for 400, a crazy amount of money, to teach us how precious that land was to Avram, because he was burying his wife Sarah there, and he was trying to prove to his descendants that this long land belongs to him, and he purchased it legally, and therefore his descendants own it. It's not just that they claimed it because they lived there, but it was purchased by Avram, by their grandfather. Over here, in this case, why does the Torah have to tell us that Yaakov bought it, and why is the Torah telling us how much? So let's dive into that specific question, and then we're going to come into our original question of Rashi. But ultimately, we're here to learn a deeper lesson, specifically about travel, but more importantly, about what our approach to multicultural situations and multifaceted opinions and multi-generational approaches, how we are supposed to take lessons from that into our daily lives. So in the story of the Torah, Yaakov comes to Shechem, which is finally the land of Israel. Is finally back after 22 years. He came from Aram, which is Aram is like northern Syria. It's very popular right now, but northern Syria, closer to Turkey, really, is where Aram is, and that's where Haran, that's where he was, where Lavan lived. Now, the Rambam tells us something special about the land of Israel in general, which kind of gives us a little hint to the answer of why Yaakov purchased the land and did not just rent it. So the Rambam tells us, and don't forget, the Rambam was never in the land of Israel. The Rambam was in Spain, and then he was chased out by the Arab conquerors in the in the late in the 1000s. That's how you say it. So once he his family was exiled from Spain, they went to Egypt, where he became the personal physician of the Sultan. I believe it was the famous Sultan Saladin. And then when he passed away, so he wanted to be buried in Israel. This is just an interesting story of the Rambam. So he wanted to be buried in Israel, and the travel from Egypt to Israel was very hard because of the desert. So they put the Rambam's casket on a camel, and they traveled with the Rambam with the whole entourage through the desert. But unfortunately, they were approached by robbers who saw this beautiful casket with treasures and stuff, because the Rambam was a very special person and people were trying to respect him. So when the robbers saw that, they figured it must be a treasure. So they chased everyone away. But try as they might, they could not get the casket off the camel's back. The casket refused to move. They couldn't open it. Miraculously, they could not touch the Rambam's casket. So they gave up eventually. And the camel just walked by itself all the way to the city of Tiberia, the city of Tiberias, and that's where the Rambam is buried until today. You could go visit his gravesite. So that's the story of the Rambam, almost over 1,000 years ago. So here's what he says. Our greatest sages would kiss the borders of Israel and its stones and roll in its dust. As King David said, behold, your servants hold her stones dear and cherish her dust. And not only that, the Rambam goes on to say, our sages taught the sins of those who dwell in Israel are forgiven. As the Torah says, the inhabitants will not say, I am sick. The people who dwell there are absolved of sin. So somebody who lives in Israel is absolved of sin, as we learned this once already. And the Rambam also says, even one who walks 4 cubits in the land of Israel will merit the world to come, and those buried there will receive atonement as if their burial place is an altar of atonement. That's how special the land of Israel is. And that's how special for centuries, whenever our sages would reach the land of Israel, they would treat even the dust and the stones as holy and want to connect with it. So this gives us a little hint as to why Yaakov wanted to purchase the part of the field, even though he wasn't planning on dwelling there other than for the temporary period of time, is because his first opportunity to own a part of the land of Israel was an opportunity he wanted to jump on no matter what, and he wanted to show his desire and his love for the land of Israel, that now that he's back, he wants to own a part of it. So that's a little hint to the answer. We're going to get to more details, though. The Even HaEzer tells us something even greater, that owning a portion of this land is like owning a portion of the world to come, which means that owning a piece of the land of Israel is so important and so special we're using this as a way to help us answer why Yaakov wanted to purchase the land and not just rent it. Yaakov did not want to be a guest in the city. This is from Nachmanides, the Ramban. Not to be confused with the Rambam, Maimonides, that's Rav Moshe ben Maimon, that's the author of the Mishnah Torah. Nachmanides is Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, who lived a couple hundred years later, not a couple hundred, lived, I think, about 100 years later. And he, long story, we won't get into his life, but he also had an amazing historical life as a Jewish leader. And he wrote a commentary on the Torah called the Ramban. So He says that Yaakov didn't want to be a guest in the city. He wanted his first entry into Israel to be on his own real estate. This is why he settled in a field and then purchased it to establish ownership in the land. He wanted it to be legal and not just, random. He wanted to own a piece, and the first opportunity that came to him, he immediately jumped on that opportunity. So that explains why Yaakov wanted to buy the land. So now, why is the Torah telling us the amount? And what is with all these explanations of the word kesitah, which, according to one opinion, I'm just going to say it again. According to one opinion, is gems. Kesitah is gems, and according to another opinion, is sheep. And according to the opinion that Rashi brings, it is a coin. So the Rebbe goes on to explain what Rabbi Akiva's meaning here about the coin is so important and why Rashi chose this explanation. What you're going to see here now is one of the mastery of the Rebbe's brilliance in understanding Rashi's depth, specifically in relation to how we apply it practically. It's not just that we want to understand the Torah well. It's not just that we want to make sure we have the perfect explanation and the perfect meaning. It's that we have the best application that we can have. And the Rebbe does this amazingly. And just take a look. Because remember, up until now, this question was never asked. So the Rebbe goes on to say, to explain the significance of this coin that we're talking about, the kesitah, Rashi quotes Rabbi Akiva, when I traveled to the cities by the sea, they called the ma kesitah. They called the coin kesitah. Now, the Rebbe compares this word kesitah is similar to the word kisutim or kishutim. In modern Hebrew, it actually means jewelry. But in ancient Hebrew, it also means ornaments. Like it's not just coin, but it's like valuable. So think about it this way. You could have a coin that is valued based on whatever it says. It's 5 cents, a nickel, or 10 cents, or 50 cents. Or you could have a coin that it's very creation, like it's a memento that is not just the value of what it is, but it has some other significance to it that makes it a valuable treasure, a tradable coin, in many cases worth a lot more than its original value because of what it is. So it's an ornament. This demonstrates that sometimes even in the monetary value of the coin is insignificant. It can have sentimental value when it is used as an adornment. They are therefore called ornaments. As we know, like for example, for coin collectors, if you collect coins from that are very old or there was a very limited amount that were minted, or if it's from a who knows what type of era, it's very valuable. Not just even if it's a currency that's still used, the fact that it's part of that minting or the fact that it's that age or that year makes it very valuable. So the idea of kesitah over just a general coin is that it's an ornament. There's something much more valuable to it, not just the currency of it. So using the foreign name kesitah informs us that Yaakov, out of the love of the land of Israel, used special coins to purchase a parcel of land in Israel, coins that doubled as ornaments. So I'm sure many of you could relate to this, but let's say you're let's say you find sentimental value in certain American currency. I remember when I was a counselor in camp, we had a camper who was collecting. When the quarters used to have a state on the back, like every state had a quarter. So he was collecting a 1 quarter for every state, and he wanted to make sure he had all 50 states, and that was like very important to him. When or sometimes, let's say the $2 bill. Some people find that very, they like having a $2 bill. So when it comes time to, let's say you're checking out at a grocery store or at a convenience store. So more often you'll pay with the currency that is least valuable to you. Because in other words, it's only valuable because it's currency, not because of any other reason. If you have any coins that are special, you'll usually keep them and hold on to them, even if they're not necessarily tradable for more than its value, but still to you, it's important, so you hold on to those. What the word kesitah is telling us, according to the Rebbe here, is that Yaakov didn't just purchase it for the monetary value, but he used the most special coins, the most sentimental, valuable coins that he had to show his love and the fact that he was valuing the land of the piece of Israel that he was purchasing. So the word kesitah in the Torah is kind of a hint to help us understand it wasn't just a financial transaction, but it was a special purchase to Yaakov, which is what warranted the types of ornaments that he used to buy the piece of land. So that's number one. But how do we know this? So the Rebbe goes on. We're gonna use another example here as to why Rashi. Okay, I'm sorry. Let me back up a second. So now we know the answer as to why the Torah tells us that Yaakov purchased the land, the piece of land that he was on, to show that he loved the land of Israel. Why does the Torah tell us how much? Because the Torah uses the term kesitah to show us it wasn't just a purchase, but it was a purchase of love, which he used. He basically emptied his treasury of the most valuable coins that he had because it wasn't just a random purchase, it was a purchase of love. So now that we know that, why couldn't Rashi just tell us that this was a special ornament, special coins that were ornaments? That's enough. Why tell us that it was Rabbi Akiva who said so? And once again, why not mention the place where Rabbi Akiva traveled to, which was Afrike, in the words of the Talmud? Why just say the coastal cities? So now that Rebbe is going to answer the question of why Rashi quotes the source, and this is going to bring us to our ultimate lesson that we're going to learn from tonight. So there's a debate in the Talmud when it talks about earning a portion in the world to come. So if God forbid a child passes away, they obviously have no sins. They're purely innocent. So, but at the same time, to go into the world, to go into the Garden of Eden, there has to be a merit. So how do they get into the Garden of Eden? So it says through the merits of their parents, right? That they're basically the merits of their parents is enough to get them into the Garden of Eden. But then the Talmud asks a question: what if their parents are sinners or bad people? So what happens to their children if God forbid they pass away? So there are even some who suggest in the Talmud, but we don't accept that opinion, that if their parents are sinners, then those children are denied because they need to have some sort of merit to get in. Even if they haven't sinned themselves, they still need a merit. Rabbi Akiva immediately dismisses that opinion. And what does Rabbi Akiva say? Rabbi Akiva says they are granted entry in the world to come. As the Torah tells us, God guards the psaim. What is psaim or pasya? So Rabbi Akiva tells them in the cities by the sea, in his travels, they call a child pasya, or pasya, however you want to pronounce it, which tells us that this verse of God guarding the psaim, even though there are those who translate it differently, I'm translating it as children to tell you that children are automatically entered into the Garden of Eden no matter what. And this is the accepted opinion, by the way. Why is this so important? Because Rabbi Akiva was the one who always ensured, he was known as not just the defense attorney of the Jewish people, but he was known as the opportunist and the one with the positive eye, regardless, always looking for the favor. It says about Rabbi Akiva that if there were 100 people or 1,000 people that were finding disfavor in someone else, Rabbi Akiva was the one opinion, was the one person who always found something favorable about that individual, no matter what. Rabbi Akiva was the one who was always positive, always looking for a way to bring a positive spin or a positive approach or attitude when it came to judging others or seeing others or helping others. And this is one of those areas where we see Rabbi Akiva doing exactly that. And over here is where Rabbi Akiva says, in the cities by the sea, in the coastal cities, is where he heard the word that pasya or patya is children, talking about children, that children go to the Garden of Eden. So it is that same Rabbi Akiva, that same statement that Rashi wants to mimic, to tell us that the kesitah is the ornaments, is the not just the coin, but they're the special coins. They're the most valuable coins that teach us that Yaakov loved the land of Israel so much that he uses precious treasures to buy the land. But there's not enough. We're gonna break this down. So the Talmud is full of stories of Rabbi Akiva's travels. Some of them are said to be metaphors. Some of them are said to be literal. That's beyond our comprehension. As the Rambam's son writes, that the Rambam wanted to write explanation on the stories of the Talmud, and he was too scared because the deepest secrets are contained in it, so they're beyond our comprehension. But one thing we know is that Rabbi Akiva's travels was not just because he was a travel enthusiast, or he was or he was a geography geek. He loved traveling because he loved finding the cultures and the other areas where Jews lived and look for ways to learn from them and look for ways to put a positive spin on their life and their situation. That's what Rabbi Akiva did. He would always travel and look for ways to bring the positivity to light. And here's what the Rebbe says about that. So intense was Rabbi Akiva's desire to favor Jews that his entire journey to the cities by the sea would have been worthwhile merely to favor the Jews, to gain the ability to determine that the children of the wicked Jewish parents have a share in the world to come, even if they die young. That basically his whole point of travels was to hear the word pasya, and to know that that means children, to tell his contemporaries who he was debating with that you're wrong. The children do go to the Garden of Eden. For that, it was worth it for him to travel all around to the Karchayam, to the cities of the sea, to make sure that he could be Melamed Schus, that he could learn a positive lesson and a positive approach to what we're talking about, children who don't have the parents' merit that they need to get into the Garden of Eden. That's what Rabbi Akiva's journey was for. And now the Rebbe draws it back to Rashi and why Rashi quotes Rabbi Akiva and does not quote the two translators, Onkelos and Targum Yonasan, who say that kesitah means sheep or gems. Rashi hints at this by saying Rabbi Akiva said, when I traveled to the cities by the sea. And that's why I didn't quote Afriki, he said cities by the sea. This was the same visit to the cities by the sea during which Rabbi Akiva heard people calling children pasya, by which he determined that children have a share in the world to come. The same visit to the cities by the sea yielding yet another opportunity for Rabbi Akiva to advocate for the Jewish people, to highlight the favor of a Jew. He discovered that, albeit a minor way, to demonstrate Yaakov's love for the land of Israel. Yaakov purchased land he did not intend to use as his permanent home with 100 kesitahs, 100 coins that were not just coins, but they were ornaments. And that wouldn't be enough if you go just by the Targum Yonasan to say that it's talking about gems. So gems have value. So it's really you're bartering a value to buy the land. It's not necessarily telling us the same thing. Sheep obviously is just a regular barter. There's no sentimental sheep. But by saying it's a coin, but a kesitah coin, which is an ornament type of coin, which means you're not just using money that has value, but you're digging from the treasury, the depths of the treasury, to take your most valuable coins, paying even more than it's worth, in order to connect to the land of Israel as soon as you possibly can. And that's what Yaakov was doing. So to sum that answer up, which is just crazy, by telling us that it was Rabbi Akiva, Rashi wanted us to understand that the word kesitah doesn't just mean a coin, but the fact that it's coming from Rabbi Akiva means that it's teaching us a lesson about Yaakov's love for the land of Israel. And the fact that it's Karchayam, the cities by the sea, is to teach us that Rabbi Akiva's whole point of traveling was to learn a lesson, a favorable lesson about somebody else. So Rashi explains why the Torah says something nominally complimentary about Yaakov, to show that no compliment is unimportant. So now the Rebbe brings it back to the whole story in the Torah. So we now understand why the Torah adds that Yaakov paid 100 kesitah. According to Rabbi Akiva, who always sought to favor the Jewish people, said we must seek to highlight a Jew's strength at every opportunity. And the Torah relates that Yaakov paid 100 kesitah, though it's a minor compliment. It's just a small little compliment to say Yaakov was, generous to buy the land. Because we must always share even minor compliments. When we get into the habit of speaking well of others, it eventually becomes second nature. So here we have something. I'm going to leave this. Actually, I'm going to leave this one on the screen for a second, because you may want to read this one again. This right here is one of the most practical and important lessons that we're going to take from this, specifically relating to travel. Why do people love to travel so much? What's so exotic about travel? So there are those who like the journey, right? There are those of us who like, the flights or the trains or the car, the journey, or the hotel or the airports or whatever. There are those of us who like, dwelling in another place, a new, experience, a new type of country or new type of city, or seeing, tourists seeing sights could be very exciting. When Airbnb actually first started advertising, I think one of their lines was, don't just visit somewhere, live there. Because they wanted you to live in the culture and experience the culture of the place you were traveling to. And there are a lot of people who don't want to stay in a hotel that's exactly the same as the hotels that are anywhere else. They want to stay in a culturally unique place to that place that they're visiting, to experience the culture of the people there. That's very common. Why? What's so attractive about experiencing a different culture? So one is just it's new. Fine, it's new. It's novel. But there's also a lot we can learn from other cultures. There's obviously stuff we shouldn't learn from other cultures, but there's plenty to learn from cultures. And also there's experiences that you could have in other cultures that you don't necessarily, or you take for granted in your own culture. Rabbi Akiva is none of those. Rabbi Akiva is a man on a mission. He was not traveling to pick up other languages and pick up other cultures and other experiences and try to just enjoy. That was not Rabbi Akiva. You know, when a business person is traveling, so they have they're traveling, they have a meeting, they have a this, they know that. If they have extra time, they'll go see some sites. But ultimately, they're just going for their business reasons and they're back. Rabbi Akiva, in essence, was a business traveler, in a sense that he had a mission. Yes, he was picking up other cultures and other places and other experiences, but it was with a very, very specific intent in mind. And that was, what can I learn from this culture or this language or this situation to learn positively about my fellow Jews? And even just for one potential compliment for Yaakov, to say that his love of the land of Israel was so great that he went to pay beyond his meat or beyond the normal price, was enough of a compliment to make it worth his entire travels. There were once two yeshiva students who, in Chabad, it became very popular for yeshiva students in the summer to go visit small towns in America or even other places, and they would go and they would find, the few Jews that were living in these tiny towns and help connect with them, and learn with them, do a mitzvah with them, and really work to make sure that there's no Jew that's forgotten or abandoned or not connected or not engaged with Judaism. And many of these yeshiva students visiting places eventually became actual Chabad centers because of those visits. Charlotte here in North Carolina happened because my father would come here before he was married as a yeshiva student to visit many of the Jews living here in Charlotte. This is in the 70s. So there were two yeshiva students who went to a small town, and they walked around. They scoured the phone book. They could not find a single Jew in that town, and they were heartbroken. And there were many of their fellow students when they came back after the summer who were sharing all these beautiful stories of these Jews that they found and they their memories of their grandparents, and they were able to have Shabbos with them. They were able to learn with them, put on tefillin or light Shabbos candles, whatever it was. They were all full of stories. And these two yeshiva students had no stories. They had nothing. This is back in the 60s, I believe. And the Rebbe on Shabbat spoke at the Hasidic gathering, and he said that there were two yeshiva students who went to a small town to look for Jewish people, and they didn't find they think they weren't successful. But I'm going to tell you now that there was a Jewish woman looking out of her window, and she wrote me a letter, and she says that she saw two yeshiva students who were walking down the street in their hat and their jacket with their tzitzis and looking Jewish, and it reminded her of the fact that she's a Jew. It reminded her of her parents and grandparents. And even without them finding her, she decided to take on to light Shabbos candles every Friday night. And the Rebbe is sharing this, saying that they think they were unsuccessful in their travels or in their mission, but they should know that they had an impact on one person's life. It was this style, this approach that the Rebbe had when it came to travels, or when it came to any sort of opportunity that we have to meet someone else or to impact somebody else, even if it means learning something that you could use later to influence another person's life, makes the whole trip worth it. And that was Rabbi Akiva. And this is why Rashi quotes Rabbi Akiva to teach us that if we have an opportunity to give someone a compliment, or we have an opportunity to improve somebody's life, or to say a nice word to someone, or to smile at someone, we have to take advantage of that opportunity. And for Rabbi Akiva, it was worth traveling. In those days, who knows what it was to travel? It was dangerous. It was ships. It was caravans. It was hard to travel, but it was all worth it just to give a compliment to another person. And this is ultimately the lesson Rashi wants to teach us with the word kesitah. So from a very simple Rashi, or a very simple, innocent Rashi, the Rebbe learns a powerful lesson here to the value both of the land of Israel and the value of another Jew, and the value of using every experience that we have to maximize it, to offer the positive compliments, positive affirmations to our fellow Jews, and as well as learning positive lessons about them as well. So let's hope we'll be able to internalize this message of Rabbi Akiva and of Rashi, and of course of Yaakov, and may we all be reunited with the land of Israel with the coming of Mashiach. So thank you very much. And now you can unmute yourself if you have any questions.